Hello, Japanese learners. So, if you're trying to learn the language, you have probably slammed right into the massive, intimidating wall that is kanji. But what if I told you there's a powerful neuroscience-based hack that could completely change the way you see it? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. Does this sound familiar? You're looking at thousands of these complex characters, and it just feels like this endless, hopeless game of flashcards. You're not alone, I promise. This is probably the single biggest hurdle for most learners, and it's a totally valid feeling. But here's the thing. What if I told you there's a secret system, a strategy that's actually used in Japanese schools to teach native speakers how to read? This isn't about memorizing more. It's about rewiring your brain to see logical patterns instead of just a bunch of random shapes. Okay, so first, let's get into the why. Why does kanji feel so overwhelming, especially for those of us who grew up with an alphabet? Well, it really all comes down to how our brains are wired to process language in the first place. This slide really gets to the heart of the problem. If you have an alphabet brain, you're trained to connect simple shapes to specific sounds. It's pretty straightforward, a low memory load. But a kanji brain has to process these complex structural symbols with multiple parts. And to make it even trickier, a single character can have several different pronunciations. So your brain is trying to treat these like random drawings, and that just creates this massive cognitive overload. So here's the crucial part. We have to stop the brute force memorization. The hack is to switch your brain's entire operating system. We need to move away from that linear sound-based approach and start using structural pattern recognition. You gotta stop seeing random drawings and start seeing logical, almost beautiful building blocks. And that brings us to the core of this whole system, the secret key that unlocks the entire puzzle. Let's talk about the fundamental building blocks of kanji. They're called radicals, or Bushu in Japanese. The best way to think of a radical is as a recurring component inside a kanji character that gives you a massive clue about its meaning. It's like a category tag or a label that's built right into the character itself. Now, you might be thinking, oh great, another thing to memorize. But listen, this is the best part. There are thousands of kanji, right? But you only need to master about 50 to 60 of the most common radicals to be able to decode a huge percentage of them. That's it. All of a sudden, this monumental task feels, well, pretty achievable, doesn't it? So how does this actually work in practice? Let's put this hack to the test. We're going to walk through a simple 3-step system to show you how you can start decoding kanji, like right now. These are our 3 steps. First, we'll learn to see radicals as meaning folders. Then, second, we'll see how they can give us sound clues. And finally, we'll use them for some powerful mnemonic storytelling to really lock in the meaning. Okay, step 1. Think of a radical as a folder on your computer. The radical you see here, 10, is basically the hand folder. Any kanji that has this radical in it almost always has something to do with the hand or some kind of physical action. It gives you an instant hint about what's going on. All right, time for our first challenge. On the screen is the kanji for utsu, which means to hit. Now, based on what we just learned, can you spot the action radical in this character? Go on, take a look. And the answer is that part on the left. That's 10, the hand radical. It's a perfect example, right? The character for hit literally has the symbol for hand right in it, signaling an action. And you'll see the same radical pop up in characters for things like throwing, holding, pushing, all actions you do with your hands. Now for our next step. While radicals are mainly about meaning, sometimes the component inside a kanji can give you a hint about its pronunciation. Now, this isn't a perfect rule, but it's a super useful pattern to look for. For example, the character for blue, ao, is often read as sei in compound words, and it tends to pass that sei or show sound onto other kanji that contain it. So here we go, challenge number 2. This kanji shiritsu has that sei sound component we just talked about. Knowing that, can you take a guess at what this character means? The answer is quiet or calm, and sure enough, its readings include sei and shizu. If you've ever heard someone in a Japanese library say shizukani, this is the character they're using. You see? You just used a pattern to guess both the sound and the meaning. That's the power of this system. And now for our final step, storytelling. This is where it gets really fun. We combine the components into a simple, memorable story to lock them into our long-term memory. Take the character for busy. It's made of the radical for heart on the left and the character for escape on the right. So what's the story? When your heart escapes, you are busy. Your mind is somewhere else. It's simple, it's sticky, and it just works. Okay, time for your final and slightly harder challenge. The kanji on the screen means to get used to something, or for something to become a custom. It's made of the heart radical and a component that means to pierce or penetrate. So, what's the story you can create to link these parts to the meaning? And here's the story. To get used to something, your heart has to penetrate the action again and again and again until it becomes second nature, until it's a custom. This little narrative connects all the pieces logically and emotionally, which makes it almost impossible to forget. So the crucial point here is that this isn't just some fun party trick. This system has a direct and massive impact on your path to real-world fluency. It's really about shifting from painful memorization to effortless understanding. By training your brain to see these patterns, you can start to decode unknown characters on the fly. You'll be reading a real Japanese newspaper or a website, you'll see a character you've never seen before, but you'll recognize the radical. And instantly, you'll have a clue to its meaning. And that just dramatically increases your reading speed and comprehension. What you're really doing here is installing a new Japanese OS in your brain. You're giving it the software it needs to process this new, beautiful structural language efficiently, just like a native speaker learns to do. So let's reframe how we think about this. Learning kanji is not a memorization game. It's a puzzle, a beautiful, logical puzzle where you get to be a detective, decoding a structural system using the key of radicals. With this approach, those thousands of characters really do transform into meaningful, manageable blocks. I truly hope this helps you on your journey. Now, I want to hear from you. What has been your biggest struggle with kanji so far? Or maybe you've discovered any funny or interesting patterns using radicals. Share it in the comments. I'm rooting for you to become fluent soon.